Okay, welcome to section 25 of A.L. Basham's The Bodhisattva in Al-Bari's The Buddhist Tradition, this A-level religious studies Buddhism topic anthology and analysis task. So here is section 25, the three bodies of the Buddha. The following passage expounds the doctrine of the three bodies, Trikiya. It is taken from Asanga's Ornament of Mahayana Sutras, a versified compendium of Mahayana doctrine with a prose commentary. The latter is quoted where it throws light on the difficult and elliptical verses. The body of essence, the body of bliss, the transformation body. These are the bodies of the Buddha. The first is the basis of the two others. The body of bliss carries in all the planes of the universe, according to region, in name, in form, and experience of phenomena. But the body of essence, uniform and subtle, is inherent in the body of bliss, and though the one the other controls is its experience when it manifests itself at will. So, commentary. The body of essence is uniform for all Buddhas because there is no real difference between them. And 6, the Sambhoga, more literally enjoyment. In some context, it implies little more than experience. So why does Basham here need to develop an account of this Trikiya, A-Y-A, here, and is it at this point appropriate? So let's just highlight the Trikiya. And the short answer is yes, it is appropriate. Basham here has already hinted at this doctrine that probably doesn't date much before the Yogacara guys, but is developed here importantly in these quotes and in Asanga, by Asanga. This was a really important doctrinal development and evolution of the idea of the Bodhisattva. It sits alongside things like Buddha nature and others. There is, and at its foundation is Sunyata and Nagarjuna's emptiness ideas. There's little explicit evidence of the doctrine, perhaps earlier than the 1st or 2nd century AD. Probably only its development is with Asanga in the 3rd, 4th century. So Basham's probably right to introduce it in his account of the history of Bodhisattva teaching and Mahayanaism in general. The Trikiya, meaning Sanskrit three bodies, in Mahayana is the concept of the three bodies or modes of being that the Buddha was in. A Buddha in human form is called the Nirmanakaya, the everyday world transformation body, the body that is constantly being transformed from one life to the next. The Sambhakaya, so the body of bliss, the enjoyment body, is the heavenly body. These are the transcendent bodhisattvas, as it were. Then the ultimate thing is that all is Buddha, Dharma, truth, teaching, kaya, body, which is synonymous with tathata, meaning a thusness, the thing that just is, the satiety, the ultimate reality, and tathagata garbha, the idea, the thing that's just there in all of us, the womb, the embryo of the Buddhas. The Tathagata Garbha Sutra has these 8 similes, that the thing to be discovered that's already there. The theory that there are 3 bodies was the subject of major discussion, development in Mahayana doctrine. It became part of general Mahayana teaching and salvation, and the whole process that you were thought to go through. It assumed a central significance in Mahayana doctrine. In the Mahayana way of thinking, the Buddha is viewed as a supramundane being. He was mundane, the historical Buddha. But what they mean supramundane, they don't mean Nibbana. He has perhaps in the heavenly realm as white Buddha, but more. It's more than that. The Buddha is multiplied, or Buddha, Dharmakaya, emanates, multiplies itself into a pentad of 5 Buddha lords, or the word Buddha here has been used not just to the particularity of the historical Buddha, but of these other bodhisattvas or Buddhas. So here are some of them, and they all have their own mythologies or related to different traditions of Mahayana Buddhism and so on. So Varachana, Ashobha, Ratnasambha, Amitabha, the Pure Land, we'll do more on him, and Amogatsiti, who all have their own doctrines, elaborate liturgies, and sometimes take the place of Shakyamuni, especially Amitabha. So, just going back to the text here, who is a Sangha? Who is a Sangha? And is Basham right to include him in his historical survey of key Mahayana figures and texts that developed the tradition? Absolutely. A Sangha is from the 3rd, 4th century. He was a major exponent of Yogacara tradition in India called Vijda Veda, okay, the way of, Traditionally, he and his half-brother Vasubandhu are regarded as the founder of this school. They have different books associated with him. These two half-brothers were major exponents of Mahayana Abhidharma teachings, or they emphasized a sort of thing called phenomenology and ontology through the interior lens of meditation and yogic practice. A real emphasis on religious experiences of the Tusina heaven, the Sambhakaya, the bliss heaven of the Buddha, experienced religiously by the interior eye. Variously, Asanga and his brother taught mind only, Siti Matra or Vijrapati Matra. A hard interpretation of this theory is only the mind exists, or a soft interpretation would be only what we can perceive matters, even if other things do exist. So nothing but consciousness is a construction, is a hard one. A softer one is that we cannot know what exists outside the mind. And this is not uncommon to Mahayana teaching. So this Chittimatra or Vajramatra means the mere representation of consciousness. The key idea developed that would be used in Shantideva's contributions to the development of Vajrayana and Tibetan thinking was the storehouse consciousness, this related idea. And eventually this will take us to the matching of Yogacara ideas with Buddha nature ideas from the Buddha nature school. Yogacara gives us a detailed explanation of the workings of the mind in a way that constructs reality and of experience. It's not that dissimilar to Kant, by the way, Kantian ideas from his critiques of reason and so on, that we are stuck with our five senses behind the glasses of our interpretation. And this gets developed in everything from Hegel and Marxism and everything else. So he writes all of this. Vishabandhu gives his version of this in the Treatise of 30 Stanzas. According to the traditional interpretation of Vishabandhu, Asanga's brother, states there are 8 consciousness, the 5 sense consciousness and the storehouse consciousness. And it's this storehouse consciousness that's really important. It's a concept developed alongside Buddha nature or Buddha doctrine that resolves the concept of mind stream. So you've got these everyday consciousnesses and you've got this Buddha consciousness, Buddha nature consciousness. These ideas would become fully developed in Tibetan idea of luminous mind or primordial mind that draws from Asanga and draws from Buddha nature thinking. Later it gets drawn into Zen and the doctrine of original enlightenment and Tibetan Buddhism. Analogies like the muck on the diamond that needs to be cleaned up, or the mud on the mirror that needs to be cleaned. So what are the bodies and where do they come from? The body of bliss, the body of essence, the transformation body, these are the bodies of the Buddhas. So the Buddha seems to the Buddha seems to develop an important idea when he says, anyone sees me sees the Dharma, anyone sees the Dharma sees me, suggesting there's a realm of ultimate truth, a supramundane realm of truth that is beyond the mundane samsaric realm of old age, sickness, and death. So the origin of this teaching, Basham certainly wants to argue, is with the Buddha, but it develops through Theravada and eventually into Mahayana. What is the body of bliss, and why was it a key innovation in Mahayana? We see this body of bliss here. Body of bliss. So this, or alongside the transformation body, is one of the emerging things from the Dharmakaya, a heavenly realm with a pantheon of deities, Buddha lords, equal or even more significant than the historical Buddha like Amitabha, who began to be, this place gets dwarfed by crowds of gods entering this celestial realm. A bit like the problem of Plato's demiurge being swamped by so many abstract objects. It gets ever more complex, this body of bliss, this heavenly realm of Buddha lords. What are the planes of existence being talked about here? The planes of the universe according to region. Within the institution, expansion and divergence of Mahayana traditions, the bureaucracy, the hierarchy of heaven began to require more complicated mythology. Ecumenically, all these traditions of Mahayana had to learn to live together, even if they didn't live with Theravada. And so they developed this schema of 5 Buddha lords and 5 families of Buddhism idea, live and let live kind of idea of parochial gods, deities in the wider Sambhakaya realm. One key idea is inherence. The body of essence, uniform and subtle, is inherent in the body of bliss, and so on and so on. And therefore, one of the other controls its experience and manifests itself. What does that mean to say it's inherence? Well, this is a philosophical development. It owes its origin in part to the Palikana, perhaps, and especially the perfection of wisdom. So, 100 BC, and it's developed in Nagarjuna's Madhyamaka, 50 to 150 AD, especially in Vishwabandhu's Yogacara, 350 AD and following. Inherent, that there is inherent existence or no inherent existence. Well, the idea of dependent originations, sunyata, finds its culmination perhaps in the Heart Sutra. The claim that there is no such thing as inherent existence. Everything is sunyata, empty. Leads to Buddha nature, Tathagata Garbha, and the Trikaya doctrine. Later into Sati Mantra, mind only. Thought to be the glue, this idea of inherence that binds together the whole Buddhaverse construct. Basham here is trying to explain the structure of these radical ideas and their implication for the historical Buddha in Shantideva's summary of maturing Mahayana thought. And so he adds this commentary. Why is he adding this commentary? To explain it. Here's the commentary. The body is uniform for all Buddhists because there's no real difference between any of them. So he's establishing, better restating a standard Mahayana thought about the Dharmakaya, the body of essence. All is Buddha. There is no inherent existence. We're all the same in the end. In the unmanifested mode, the supreme state of absolute knowledge, primordial mind, whatever you want to call it, in the Mahayana Buddhist cosmology or ontology, is radically empty. In fact, emptiness is empty. The celestial realm no more exists than the earthly realm. All is, in the end, primordial mind. All is Buddha. What is this Sambhakaya and this kind of footnote here talking about? Well, at the bottom here, we get this nice little footnote about literary enjoyment. Sambhakaya literally means enjoyment. Context implies more than the experience. Basham is explaining the etymology of the celestial world as a word. He loves dictionaries. He loves definitions. He loves tracing the development of language through books and writings and inscriptions on rocks and on tablets and coins and everything else. He's unperturbed. He wants a naturalistic explanation and turns to naturalistic sources, unperturbed by any supernatural claims. But maybe he likes dictionaries so much there's a bliss realm full of them. So this was section 24, and the three-body doctrine is called the Tricheia.